Is it time to read The Little Prince? Hello and welcome. Welcome to Input English. This episode, I'd like to introduce a book that is world famous and famous among language learners. That is The Little Prince. It was written in the 1940s by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It has been translated into languages that are spoken all over the world. And it is common for language learners to read The Little Prince in the target language. It was written for children, but it is interesting and compelling for adult readers. Lots of people learning languages read The Little Prince. Historically, I did not read it in English when I was growing up, so I actually didn't know the story at all. I had heard the title, and some of my friends had read The Little Prince when we were in school, in primary school, but I didn't read it. The fact is, in primary school, I didn't read very much. I was interested in science and math, and so my reading of literature was lagging. It was not good. This was a problem for me that I corrected later in life. So since I didn't know The Little Prince, the first time I read it was in Spanish. So I got to discover the story of The Little Prince through Spanish. Subsequently, I've read it in German and in English. It's a great book. It's a great story. It is a great opportunity for you to improve your level of English. As you recall from other videos, I don't encourage people to start from the very beginning with reading. That has implications in terms of pronunciation. You want to get the sounds of the English language into your head before you start trying to pronounce things. And when I say pronounce things, I mean out loud or in your head. We don't want reading to give you input that is pronounced badly. So the best way to solve that challenge is to listen a great deal before you start reading. After you have hundreds of hours of experience with the language, then reading becomes a very powerful tool. But the material you read needs to be sufficiently easy that you can absorb it. You don't want it to be a struggle. In language learning, as you try to learn English better, you don't want to struggle. You want it to be relatively easy. The Little Prince turns out to be pretty easy to read. That's good. When should you start reading The Little Prince? Well, when you're ready. If you have a lot of hours in contact with English and you understand, for instance, what I am saying relatively well, then you're probably ready to start reading. Now, reading has tremendous benefit to the language learner. The benefit to you for reading will be an improvement in your vocabulary and an improvement in your use of English grammar. By reading, you don't get a bunch of grammar rules. you get a bunch of grammar patterns in your mind so that when you do speak, the words come out correctly. You understand the grammar instinctively, intuitively. One of your great tools to understand grammar and vocabulary without studying them is reading. When you read The Little Prince in English as an English language learner, you have a choice. You could read it for the very first time in your target language, English, or you could read it in your native language so that you know the story and then read it in English. There is no right or wrong in this. It's a personal choice. The advantage of reading it in your own language first is as you encounter words and parts of the story that are not making sense, if you know the story in general terms, it provides some clues. So it may be useful to you to do it that way. If your English skills are strong enough, then just reading it in English without pre-reading it in your original language might be quite the adventure. For me, I read The Little Prince for the first time in Spanish. I had never read it in English. Subsequently, I have read it in English, but my first reading was in Spanish. There is no right or wrong answer. If you're earlier in your language learning journey in English, you might want to start by reading The Little Prince in your language and then in English. If you buy The Little Prince, how can you buy it? Well, it can be a book, typically a paperback book. They're inexpensive. They're easily available. It could be an ebook that you use on a device, or it could be an audiobook. All of those are fine. If you're early in your language learning journey and you want to read The Little Prince, use the audiobook. When you listen to an audiobook, you can often control the speed of the playback of the book. And so if the audiobook is a little difficult to understand, maybe play it at 3/4 speed until you get an understanding of it. In Spanish, I didn't read The Little Prince once. No, it's a short book. I probably read it 5 times. And each time I got more out of it because my level of Spanish had grown. So if you read The Little Prince the first time, perhaps on an audiobook, maybe you just get some of the story and not all the details. Don't worry about it. Come back in months, come back after hundreds of hours and do it again. You will get more out of it. It may be useful for you to read The Little Prince 4 or 5 times, not as an assignment, but as something you're interested in and curious about. The ebook has a fun advantage for people in terms of vocabulary, because as you read in an ebook, if you encounter a word that you don't understand, you can touch it with your finger and get a clue what that word means, a quick little definition. It doesn't require you to put the book down. It doesn't require you to find a dictionary. It doesn't require you to go through and find the word. You just touch the word with your fingertip and you get a clue. Oh, that's what he meant. And then off you go. You're still reading. So ebooks are fabulous for language learners if you're struggling with the occasional vocabulary word that turns out to be important to the story. Of course, reading a physical book is the traditional way to read, and this is just personal preference. I make no rules about how you read. A lot of people like physical books. They like to smell the pages. They like the texture. They like to turn the pages. They like to write in the margins. You do what you want to do in that. So to summarize, The Little Prince is a valuable resource for you, the language learner, because it is easy to understand and it's interesting. It's available with audiobook if you're at an earlier stage and you still are focused primarily on listening. And then later, you might find it in a printed form, such as an ebook or a physical paperback book. Reading books is fabulous for building your vocabulary and your understanding of grammar. So that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you read The Little Prince. I encourage you to do that. We encourage comments below, and I hope you come join us in future videos. See you soon.